Welcome to the Truth and Liberty Show, where trusted leaders bring biblical insights to important issues to help you stand for truth and effect godly change in our nation and in our world.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Truth and Liberty Show. So glad you could be joining us today. On today's program, I want to talk about an issue that is not really talked about enough, I think, in public circles today, but that is of vital importance. And that is a subject that I would call the rule of law and civic discourse. You know, here in our country, in America, we are a constitutional republic, a republic that is built on the rule of law under God. Now, there's so much that I could say about that, but what do I mean by the rule of law? The rule of law is the concept that the law exists for a purpose and for a reason, and that it is to be honored, to be respected, and to be enforced without partiality and without corruption. Enforced not for the personal gain of the lawmaker or the king or the law enforcement officer or anyone else, but for the good of the public. Without partiality to who the defendant is in the case or any other material or information that is outside of the evidence in that case. But it's also bigger than that. It's that the apparatus and the power of the government should not be used for personal gain or to punish or reward people based on things that are not relevant to the application of the law. For example, I know that sounds like a lot, but we don't reward and punish people under the law because they're of a particular race, of a particular family, of a particular religion, a particular political party, or because they are in any other group or category that might be favored by those who are in power or opposed by those who are in power at the time. This impartiality and universal application of the law at all times is called the rule of law. Well, there's another part to this, which is that in our particular nation, we believe that the people have the right to govern themselves, right? I think it was Abraham Lincoln who said that it's a government of the people, by the people, for the people. We have a representative government. And so in our nation, it's always been understood that the laws are made by the representatives of the people through the processes that are set forth in our Constitution, which has been adopted by the states and by the people, right? There's order and there's process to the adoption of new laws, to the changing of laws, and so on. And you can even see this in our Constitution itself, where it says that the president has the duty to enforce the laws of the United States, right? To faithfully execute the laws is what it says. We don't want the president picking and choosing what laws he enforces and what laws he doesn't enforce, which ones help his friends and hurt his enemies. That's not the kind of nation we live in. That's called a banana republic. But there's another part to this as well, which is the idea that we can talk about, and we should talk about very freely, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, the issues of our day, our concerns. We have one side, we have another side, we have different viewpoints, and all should be considered and have the right and opportunity to engage in public discourse and public debate, and to speak to their representatives and address their concerns with them. But we, in this country, we don't solve our problems by violence. We don't solve our issues by force, by intimidation, and by fear. And I'm concerned that there has been, in America today, there has been a very serious degradation of the concept of the rule of law. That we no longer, first of all, we no longer understand it as a people. Second of all, we don't respect it and honor it. We think that many people in this country think that those who are able to throw the biggest fit, spend the most money, intimidate the most people, and so forth and so on, are the ones who should rule, who are the ones who should get their way. You know, last year in the presidential campaign, there were 2 assassination attempts on Donald Trump. One that missed blowing his head off by a millimeter or 2. Now we have riots in the streets over ICE enforcing the law of America. Notice these riots that are going on, they're not alleging in these riots that anybody's constitutional rights really are being violated. I mean, they are, but it's not a serious allegation. This is Immigrations and Customs Enforcement who are coming in to arrest and detain people that are suspected of violating our immigration laws. Under the law, they have the power and the obligation to do these things. We have these violent riots, though, taking place with cars being burned, windows being smashed, graffiti sprayed all over the place, actual ICE officers now being shot. We have a case in Texas where 10 ICE officers, or an ICE officer was, a group of them were attacked by 10 people. One of them was shot and put in the hospital. And we have other instances of violence against immigration officials. We just heard in the news recently that the Director of National Intelligence has referred to the Justice Department the situation for investigation and charges where warranted, the situation where Barack Obama, the sitting President of the United States, with his Attorney General, his National Security Advisors, in collusion with the Hillary Clinton campaign, colluded to create a Russia collusion hoax. Let me just take a side trip here and tell you, this ought to be outrageous to every American, even to Democrats, that a sitting president of the United States would create a lie, a false narrative, doctor up a dossier in order to bring these charges against someone running for president of the United States, to marshal the intelligence apparatus, the Justice Department, and the power of the United States Congress against him to stop him from winning election, all based on a lie. A lie that he knew was a lie, and they all knew was a lie. You have collusion accusing someone else of collusion. Once again, we see the Marxist tactic of projection, where they accuse you of exactly what they are guilty of. But it doesn't stop there, folks. Let's look at some of the examples, going all the way back to 2016, when we had an A-list comedian in this country hold up a mock, bloody, severed head of Donald Trump. Do you remember when Trump was elected and we have these women's rights marches in the streets where they were actually wearing hats on their head that were images of female vaginas? We have students screaming into the air, and they have to be given safe spaces at school and work with puppies and coloring books because they can't control their own emotions, because they can't deal with the fact that, the other side won an election. We had riots in the streets after Donald Trump's win in 2016. In 2020, we have, go back to George Floyd, right? You have Black Lives Matter and Antifa rioting across this country in 2020, burning buildings and cars, taking over entire downtown areas, costing billions of dollars worth of damages, assaulting police officers, sending police to the hospital, fabricating weapons and other things like this in these marches. We have, when you have people nominated by the president to the Supreme Court of the United States, these leftists show up at their homes, demonstrating, intimidating them, coming onto their property. We have this new word in our vocabulary now called doxing, where they find out where you are and where you live and your personal information, and they share that on social media, calling on all other leftists to bombard you and attack and invade your personal life. And this is all designed for intimidation. Do you remember when Brett Kavanaugh was nominated to the Supreme Court of the United States and the demonstrators surrounded the Capitol, and they actually went into the hearing room where a hearing of the United States Senate was underway, shouting and screaming and yelling things and profanity and all this other stuff? They actually leaked an opinion of the Dobbs versus Mississippi case that overturned Roe and set the nation ablaze, an illegal act in and of itself. And then the demonstrations, the conduct of the pro-abortion left in this country, where they were attacking and torching pregnancy resource centers that help women who think about the possibility of keeping their baby. And they set these places on fire and graffitied them and doxed pro-life workers. Unbelievable. Do you remember Donald Trump's State of the Union address where all the Democrats dressed in white and other stuff, and they stood up and turned their back on the President of the United States as he addressed the nation? Do you remember when Nancy Pelosi tore up her copy of his State of the Union speech? Do you remember in Trump's recent address, joint address to Congress? I say recent, I think it was in February or so. Anyway, of 2025, it wasn't a State of the Union because it had just been inaugurated. But Al Green, a congressman sworn to uphold the Constitution of the United States, stands up in the middle of the proceedings, shaking a cane and yelling at the president, interrupting his speech, had to be removed by the sergeant at arms. How about Elon Musk and Doge? The Department of Government Efficiency, where they're reviewing the expenditures and processes of the federal government to make them more efficient, to eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse. And the left absolutely goes apoplectic. They attack Tesla dealerships, Tesla cars. Why? Did Tesla do something wrong? Do the owners of those dealerships and cars, did they do something wrong? No, they didn't. They're just furious at Elon Musk that he might dare to expose the wickedness in our government, the waste, the fraud, the abuse, as they vandalize these people's private property. And now we have the No King movement and ICE. We have congressmen, congresswomen showing up at immigration custom detention centers demanding that they be let in, sneaking in past the guards, these unbelievable demonstrations. We have Congresswoman Maxine Waters in Los Angeles actually publicly confronting National Guard troops, saying on camera, "What, are you going to shoot me too?" And they're lying about there being no violence in these demonstrations. We have other congressmen trying to take over the press conference of Secretary Kristi Noem, a congressman showing up there trying to take over the conference and stage these things. When the Doge was exposing the unbelievable expenditures by the USAID agency, you remember millions of dollars for Sesame Street in Iraq, or condoms in Gaza, and LGBT training all over the world, and all this other unbelievable waste of taxpayers' resources. And you have congressmen and women showing up at the USAID office demanding to be let in because they want to do their own so-called due diligence or oversight there. This is all lawlessness, is what it is. It's disrespect for the rule of law. It is a national temper tantrum by the left. Recently, after some of the ICE enforcement, we have calls actually on the left, people calling for protesters to storm the White House, saying there needs to be blood. It goes all the way back to Hillary Clinton calling Donald Trump supporters and conservatives deplorables. And how about Joe Biden when he was first elected and he gave that infamous speech in front of Independence Hall where he labeled all MAGA followers as traitors? You have a rock star recently at a concert saying, "If you voted for Donald Trump, don't come to my concerts." Folks, this is not how we're going to succeed as a country. Our founding fathers did not want this mob rule. John Adams said, this is democracy, it's not a republic. This is when the majority rules and always gets its way, and they have no respect for the rights of others or the rule of law. John Adams said, "Remember, democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself. There never was a democracy yet that did not commit suicide." What we want, and John Adams said this, is we want, and our nation is designed to be a government of laws, not of men. So this incredibly destructive behavior, I believe personally that it's coming mostly from the left, not entirely. The vitriol and sarcasm and anger and hatred by conservative pundits is also often more destructive than it is helpful. But this has to stop, ladies and gentlemen. We can't determine our national course, our policy, our agenda, our government actions based on the greatest riot, based on who throws the biggest fit, based on who turns out the biggest mob or burns the most buildings. What's next, folks? Where is this going to end? Civil war? Actual war in our country? God forbid. We have to understand that there are times when you win and there are times when you lose. You cannot always get your way in a republic form of government. Sometimes the other side is going to live, and you deal with that. You rally together and you do your best to persuade and operate peacefully to win the next election. It's part of living in a civilized society, accepting loss. Here today on my show, I have as my very special guest two gentlemen from the local area here who have served on school boards. One of them, Derrick Wilburn, is an incredible man, actually. Derrick is the founder, he's executive director of Rocky Mountain Black Conservatives and a driving force behind POC capital interns. These ministries are designed to help Black Americans get involved in public life and to represent the point of view of conservative Black Americans in public. He is a sought-after speaker and a presenter. He's got a Bachelor of Science degree in marketing and a master's in business administration. He's a longtime upstanding citizen of our local community, and he recently ran for school board in a District 20 in Colorado Springs, and he's going to tell you what has happened to him because he dared to read an excerpt from a sexually explicit book that was in the school library in District 20 in a candidate forum to make the point that we've got to get this garbage out of our schools, and what happened to him when he did that. Also, Dave Illingworth, an attorney here in this area, originally from Texas, went to Catholic University of America School of Law, and then served in the United States Air Force in the JAG Corps. He also served on a local school board here in Woodland Park, where we're located. His wife helped establish a charter school, and he's now representing Derrick in a defamation lawsuit against a woman who has accused Derrick of unspeakable acts and offenses. And these gentlemen are going to make this point through their stories that I'm trying to tell you today, that we have got to get back to the rule of law, respect for the rule of law, and civil discourse in this country. This other conduct is out of bounds and ought to be intolerable on both the right and the left. And so I'm really excited to have them join me on the show today to give you this real life example of what I'm talking about. Don't go away. We're going to share some information with you, and we'll be right back with Derrick Wilburn and Dave Illingworth. Are you passionate about standing for truth in the culture, but don't know how to get started? Well, Truth and Liberty, our mission is to educate, unify, and mobilize the body of Christ to stand for truth in the public square. And as part of our mission, we provide you with an amazing array of resources on our website. And our website has just been revamped, remodeled, and retooled to be user-friendly. And I'm so excited about it because I believe that there's nothing like it out there anywhere. I want to encourage you today to go to truthandliberty.net and check out the Resources Center and the Get Equipped Center. On our Resources Center, you will find hundreds of links, hundreds of videos, articles, blogs, even America's original founding documents can be found on Truth and Liberty's Resources Center. It's searchable by topic, preset topic, or you can put in a custom search to find exactly what you need and what you're interested in. In the Get Equipped section, we link you to tools created by our strategic partners, including Pray, Vote, and Engage tools. We culture impact teams, civic action teams, biblical citizenship in modern America, biblical worldview training, and more. So go today to truthandliberty.net and find what you need to get equipped to stand for truth in the public square. Hello everybody, and welcome back to Truth and Liberty. So excited today to have as my special guests Derrick Wilburn and Dave Illingworth with us. Guys, thanks for coming on Truth and Liberty.
Thank you.
Pleasure's all mine. Good
Derrick,
to see you, Richard.
You've been on the show many times before. It's so good to have you back. Man, a lot has been going on in your life, including serving on a school board in Colorado Springs.
Correct.
It's District 20. Since 2023, you've been serving. I just want to kick things off here by asking you how you got, what brought you to that place where you decided you wanted to run for school board?
Well, technically, I've been serving on the school board since 2024. The election was in November of 23. We were sworn in January of 24.
Right.
Just for accuracy's sake. And I'm appearing today not as a member of the board, not representing the board. We're going to get into, I'm sure, some civil matter that I'm involved in. I'm doing that as a private citizen, not using any board resources, won't use any board resources. It's strictly a matter of a civil matter between myself as a private citizen and another person as a private citizen.
Right.
But I reached the point where we all hopefully get one day of reaching empty nest. My children were very successful academically, learned some things. I learned some things along the line about helping create successful academic children, and thought I could apply that on a broader scale. As you know, and we'll probably talk about later, I spoke in a video that went viral in a way that I couldn't have possibly predicted. Nobody could have. Where I am strongly against the introduction of things like critical race theory into our schools. I don't think it's beneficial. I want to focus on academic excellence, and said I've developed a skill set over the years and over the course of my life that I think voters would appreciate, and the voters proved me right.
Yeah, so you saw what was going on in the school district. There are some of the things, and you decided you were going to get involved and make a difference. Well, Dave, you're with us today. Now you're serving as Derrick's attorney in the civil lawsuit that he was talking about, but you also served on a school board right here in Woodland Park, Colorado. How did that happen?
I had young children in those schools, and in 2021 became aware of some of the issues that were plaguing the Woodland Park School District and other districts across the state and the nation. And I wanted to make sure that the schools were focused on teaching the kids and not indoctrinating them. And that was quite a phrase back in the day, was, education, not indoctrination. But that was true, and that was a real issue at the time.
Yeah, there was a particular teacher in the school district, if I know your story correctly, who had announced that she was going to be teaching Black Lives Matter material to the kindergarten. And that kind of stoked your fire, I guess.
I read a column in the Colorado Sun she published in 21 saying she had, in fact, already taught it to the kindergartners. And I had at least one child at the time who was in kindergarten. And so it was really alarming to think that that was what was going on.
Well, Derrick, let's go back to you. I'd like our viewers, we've played this before when you were on the show, but I want to show them your video again, your video. It's a video of you before you were on the school board, actually showing up at a meeting and sharing your views on something. If that clip is ready, let's go ahead and play that now.
Derrick Wilburn. As you approach the mic, I want to just make a comment to our audience. When you agree with the speaker and you stand up, you are showing the board a consensus, I guess, that you agree with that particular speaker. So again, I encourage you, if you agree, stay by your seat, but stand up. Okay, that way we can see that. Thank you. Sir, please go ahead.
Good evening, board. I'd like to begin my comments tonight by reading a quote, which in essence is the genesis of all of this Black Lives Matter, social justice, CRT conversations we're having in our country today. Quote, "I am not going to stand up to show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses black people and people of color," close quote. Colin Kaepernick, August 2016. I am the direct descendant of the North American slave trade. Both my parents are black, all 4 of my grandparents are black, all 8 of my great-grandparents, all 16 of my great-greats. On my mother's side, my ancestors were enslaved in Alabama. On my father's side, we were enslaved in Texas. I am not oppressed. I'm not oppressed, and I'm not a victim. I'm neither oppressed nor a victim. I travel all across this country of ours. And I check into hotels, and I fly commercially, and I walk into retail establishments, and I order food in restaurants. I go wherever I want, whenever I want. I am treated with kindness, dignity, and respect, literally from coast to coast. I have 3 children. They are not oppressed either, although they are victims. I've taught my children they are victims of 3 things: their own ignorance, their own laziness, and their own poor decision making. That is all. My children, we are not victims of America. We are not victims of some unseen 190-year-old force that kind of floats around in the ether. Putting critical race theory into our classrooms is taking our nation in the wrong direction. Racism in America would by and large be dead today if it were not for certain people and institutions keeping it on life support. And sadly, very sadly, one of those institutions is the American education system. I can think of nothing more damaging to a society than to tell a baby born today that she has grievances against another baby born today simply because of what their ancestors may have done 2 centuries ago. There is simply no point in doing that to our children. And putting critical race theory into our classrooms in part does that. Putting critical race theory into our classrooms is not combating racism, it's fanning the flames of what little embers are left. I encourage you to support this resolution. Let racism die the death it deserves, and let's keep living the life of the country that we are. Thank you.
Powerful clip from 3 or 4 years ago. Actually, that went viral, didn't it? It went all over the world, I think.
I found out fairly recently that was one of the 5 most clicked on and watched videos in the world for nearly 18 months.
Wow.
Somewhere north of 70, 75 million watches as of today. And you can't plan that. I had no way of knowing that was going to happen, of course. I was just the vessel in the right place at the right time.
But it shows your passion for this area of education, and you decided to run for school board, and you got elected on the District 20 school board in Colorado Springs. And share with us a little bit about what the conditions were of the schools. Were they teaching this Marxism and the CRT and DEI and all this sort of stuff?
District 20, so the education system in general versus District 20 in specific, not the same question. District 20, when I came in, was in good shape. We're accredited with distinction, have been accredited with distinction at that time 15 years in a row. And it's a strong school district, and we do a good job. Are there rooms and areas for improvement? Of course, there's always room and area for improvement. But the district was not over the top horrible with this stuff. I think to the degree that we did have these issues, it was more isolated to individuals than opposed to systemically throughout the school district. So in that regard, we have an excellent district, always have had an excellent district. I like to think it's better now, and we're constantly striving to improve. But it's a very strong school district.
Well, one of the problems that you did identify, though, when you were running was the problem of inappropriate sexualized material in the school library. Am I right on that?
That is correct, and that is true, I think, virtually all libraries. Of course, I can't speak for every library in Philadelphia, but we had, and still do, we're working on it, books that are just inappropriate for children. And one of the campaign platforms, one of the planks I ran on, was we need to get this stuff out of our schools. If it's over the top, hypersexualized stuff, and you want your child reading it, that is none of my business. Just don't ask me to pay for it. And the community resonated with that message.
So you were, when you were running for school board, I think this was was it in October of 2023?
Correct.
Right? There was a candidate forum held, right?
Correct.
And tell us what happened at that candidate forum.
At that forum, I had content from some of these books with me on the platform. There were 4 of us who were running. And I chose 3 books, one of which was taken from the library of the very school that we were in, a middle school, and I read the content out loud and said, to make the point, this is beyond inappropriate. Where would be an appropriate place to read this stuff in public? We need to get this filth out of our schools. And I'd like to think the voters responded and settled the issue, but of course that's not the case.
All right, so you had selected 3 books that were in the school libraries.
Not 3, one of the 3 was. All 3 were in the district libraries at some level.
But you picked one to read an excerpt from, right?
I picked 3. I read from 3.
Oh, you read from 3, okay.
Correct.
And was it, you were reading content that was pretty graphic?
Correct.
I don't want to read it on the show.
No, we can't do that. It's totally inappropriate.
Okay, but it was graphic sexual content from books that were in children's school library in the District 20 school district.
At the high school level, at the junior high school level, at the middle school level.
Okay. All right, well, something else, before we get into the rest of this, I want the audience to understand what you did before you read the content, right? You said something to the audience. We've got it, I think we can show this on the screen, but you forewarned them about the nature of what you were about to read from the book. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
I don't use
Well, let's just show it, and then we
language.
And here's what you said, according to, and I took this from your lawsuit, okay, that you have filed, that we're going to talk about in just a second. But you said, I do not curse. I'm going to speak some words now that have not come from my lips in 30 years, and I apologize in advance, ladies and gentlemen, for what you're about to hear. These are books currently available in District 20 libraries. Please forgive me in advance. Okay, so...
All true.
All right, and so you read some excerpts from these books, and what happened after that?
To speed the story along, I won the election. So that was in October. Election is in November. I won the election. And at the November board meeting, so I'm not a member of the board. I'm sitting out in the gallery at this point.
Okay.
A parent from the district came to the podium and accused me of child sex predation, called me a child predator.
Okay.
For the first time. Right. And then that pattern continued until the point where I engaged Mr. Illingworth.
Okay, so this parent in District 20 publicly accused you of being a child predator, and because you had read graphic material from a book in public, right?
Correct.
Okay. So
the children had access to in those schools.
Yeah, right. Okay. So tell me this then. You eventually got sworn in and serving on the board there in District 20. Was this just a one-off from this lady, or what happened after that? Did she continue to accuse you of things?
Take it, Dave.
He's not a one-off, unfortunately. I mean, Derrick had to wait a really long time to see if, there could be just a moving on from this. And it didn't. It was every month. This lady was a regular. I think she came to just about every school board meeting every month with a statement that was more or less the same, always a variation on the same theme that Derrick, was a child predator, and that his act of reading that material, making parents and voters aware of what kind of content was already being provided to children in district schools, that was done for some sort of obscene reason, and not for the reason that he made expressly clear, which was that this stuff is being made available. People need to be aware of this, and they need to decide whether they want to support a candidate who's going to try and prevent children from having access to inappropriate content, or if they do want to have taxpayer funds going to books with, titles like, This Book is Gay was one of the books that you had to read to them. There was another book that was saying awful, terrible things about African Americans in our country, something that was very sensitive to Derrick. And so that Derrick, you quoted from his disclaimer. Of course, he also spoke about, what his position was, that he would not support these kind of books being in schools and taxpayer money going to this. And
it was a candidate forum, and you were responding to a question that had been asked. Is that right?
That's right.
Correct.
Okay, so I got a copy, I think you sent it to me actually, of the petition that you filed against this parent, and I want to just go through some of the specific comments that she's made and accusations she's made against you in public. The first one that you've listed is that you committed sex crimes against children. There's no truth to that, I take it.
Never in my life.
Okay, I'm just going to go through. A child predator, we always talked about that. Number 3, a danger to kids. Has she ever explained what it is she's talking about there, other than you reading this excerpt?
Not to my knowledge.
The biggest criminal in D20. Number 5, has committed crimes against students, preys on children for personal gain, read pornographic content to little kids because that arouses him, performed a lewd act for children, raped a child in the mind, she said. Number 10 is the sexual deviant who enjoys public displays of lewdness and exhibitionism, and that you victimized and traumatized children. So That's pretty incredible, an incredible list that someone would make those accusations just because of reading that excerpt at a public meeting. What was your response to this?
My response was to engage Mr. Illingworth.
Okay.
Tried asking her to knock it off once, didn't go very well, which is another portion of the action. So I engaged Mr. Illingworth. We filed a served a cease and desist, basically saying, knock this off. I mean, there's a lot of things I am, but a pedophile is not one of them. Not even close. The whole thing makes me sick. I won't even get into my views of pedophilia. That's the furthest thing in the world from what I am. So serve a cease and desist. Please ceased this behavior. That was summarily dismissed. In fact, if anything, that was a log on the fire that caused the behavior to escalate to the point where we then filed the lawsuit.
She's done this not just at the school board meetings. She goes on social media platforms like Facebook and Nextdoor. She's also made the same allegations to the Colorado General Assembly and the Colorado Springs City Council.
Well, and there was an incident that happened at or after a meeting, I guess, a board meeting, where it was some kind of confrontation in a parking lot. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I'll just say I've read the police reports from that, and this lady, Miss Guthrie, has made these sorts of accusations and called the police on Derrick. And the Colorado Springs police did a full investigation of 3 very specific crimes that she alleged against him, both relating to her screaming at him in the parking lot that night, and then also his response at that candidate forum where he exposed what kind of material was being provided to children. And she told the police, hey, listen, you have to arrest him. He's committing he promoted obscenity to minors. That's a very specific crime under Colorado state law, and that he has committed crime of harassment and the crime of attempting to intimidate a witness or victim, which is a felony.
So this lady, make sure our viewers understand here, this lady, Bernadette Guthrie, not only is making these accusations against you in social media and at school board meetings, she actually filed a police report following an altercation in a parking lot after a meeting where she was screaming and yelling profanities at you, and she alleged these crimes that you committed, and the police investigated.
Yes, I've read the police reports. Colorado Springs PD looked into each of the allegations that she made. They reviewed video from the candidate forum. They reviewed surveillance video from the incident around the meeting in November and outside. They talked with witnesses. And they called Miss Guthrie and explained to her that there was no probable cause that Derrick had committed any crime that they were aware of, and specifically the ones that she alleged. But despite her knowledge that police had cleared him, she continued over the next 12 months or so to reiterate and repeat these same outrageous claims.
So the police said there's no crime been committed by Derrick Wilburn here, but she didn't go away. She kept doing this. And so you sent the cease and desist letter, and now you filed a lawsuit. And I'm curious, is she still engaging in this conduct?
She's quieted down a little bit and changed her tune a little bit. Not entirely. I'll tell you this. We had an important victory in the lawsuit in the district court in El Paso County, and they actually contacted her for comment, the Colorado Springs Gazette, and in the article I read, I think she defamed him all over again, where she again accused him of reading pornography to children. And, you know, Derrick had to expose some tough stuff, and some of it may have been a little R-rated, but it was not on that kind of level.
Well, I guess just for fairness' sake, Ms. Guthrie's daughter was with her in the audience at the candidate forum, 11-year-old or so daughter, and that's where the reading to children thing comes from, I guess. But you weren't aware of that, I take it.
From my vantage point, I could see who was in the audience, and that discussion, in my estimation, is entirely fair. Was this the right thing to do? Was this the wrong thing to do? That's a fair discussion. Did I do it for the purposes of personal gratification? Did I do it because reading things to minors somehow arouses me? Is a completely separate conversation.
Well,
And-
here, it's interesting, isn't it?
And
Derek?
it's an outrageous and false accusation.
Beyond.
Yeah.
Beyond.
Well, here's the thing. These folks are saying, now I'm not saying Ms. Guthrie agrees with this, but the liberals and the progressives and the leftists are saying this stuff ought to be in our school libraries. This pornographic, salacious material ought to be there. But when you say this is indecent and inappropriate for minors, they say, oh, you're just exaggerating and blowing things out of proportion, right? And so then when people come to a board meeting and say, this is what's in there, then they say, oh, you can't read that in public, that's inappropriate material. Is that a catch-20? Is that a double standard, Dave?
Yeah, I think you're right. That is a catch-22, and that has plagued parents all across the nation who have tried to bring these issues to light. It's not unique to D20 or Colorado. You have parents who come to these school board meetings and say, nobody believes me, I'll quote to you. And then you have school boards that try and shut them down and say that they're being inappropriate because it's a public setting. And the cold hard fact is they're exposing what's already there, what children have access to, what the schools are providing to children with taxpayer money. And if you don't quote from it, you're called a hysteric who, like you said, is blowing out of proportion. If you do quote from it, you can be called even worse things, like what has happened to Derrick here.
If you don't read it, then you let them get away with saying, oh, it's not that bad. But if you do read it, then you're a child predator and being indecent. Is that pretty much it?
That's kind of it. Or the argument that, look, if you don't want your child reading it, fine. Just you can restrict access through the school system. Don't let your child read it. But that doesn't change the fact that the taxpayers of the school district are still providing it.
Well, and I'm gonna debate a little bit on this, and let me know. Feel free to give me your candid answer. But even if you have some system set up in the schools where parents consent to their children checking it out, what if we said, oh, it's okay for a child to go buy a pornographic movie as long as his parent consents? Isn't there some level where the protection of the child we ought to say, this stuff shouldn't even be accessible at all?
The private citizen part of me says yes. The school board part of me says...
Well, you're not here representing the school board.
That's
right?
true.
Okay.
To what degree can we be the parenting police? Of course, I agree with you. I don't think that it's appropriate for children to sit around with this type of material. But if you as a parent do, I can't run your family and household.
Okay, well, this is just Richard Harris on Truth and Liberty. My opinion is that stuff shouldn't even be accessible because it's inappropriate and harmful for children. Dave, what do you think?
Well, I think traditionally you see that the state has some interest in protecting children. We all believe that children belong to their parents, and parents should direct their education and their upbringing. But there are limits. We do have laws against child abuse. We do have laws against what minors can purchase and what minors can use and possess. So that's a line for the informed citizens to draw when they make their laws democratically. And we have to recall that in Colorado, these school boards, they're elected positions. Mm-hmm. This is how the voters get a say in how the education is being given to their children when they entrust their children to the public school system that their taxes fund.
So going back to your case for a minute, Derrick, now you've had to hire an attorney to pursue this claim, and Dave's got a heart of gold, but he doesn't work for free. So you got to pay his bills. You've set up a fund, I think, for where people who want to help you out with this can do so. You want to tell us how they can do that?
Actually, some friends set it up on my behalf, but let's call that the same thing. And they can. Not only can they go there, which is the URL is in the back of my brain. I'll bring it out in a second.
We've got it. We can show that on the screen. That'd be great.
But there they can actually read from the judge's order, from the judge's ruling on the motion to dismiss. They can click and see with their own two, hear with their own two. The comments that have been made at school boards, all that is linked right on there. So this isn't just a couple of guys overreacting to something that's fairly minor and trivial. I'm loved also. I have a wife. We just crossed 31 years last month.
That's awesome.
I've got 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter, and they have to sit and watch their father be called a pedophile, and this isn't. They're not immune from what their dad goes through, just like I'm not immune from what they go through. So it's been painful. This isn't just me being vindictive and I just want to silence a parent. You're free to speak out, and you should speak out. That's why we have public comments during our school board meetings. But there are lines.
And in today's media, guys, you see this where you don't have to prove anything. You just make the accusation.
It's on the internet,
and
it must
the
be
media
true.
runs with it. Oh, so-and-so has been accused of such and such. And according to reliable sources, blah, blah, blah. And you never know for sure whether it's happened or not. It's good enough to ruin their reputation.
I mean, what Derrick is suffering through is something that is so hard to be at the eye of the storm in, because Derrick is suffering through the thing where if even a hint of this stuff gets attached to your name, your entire life, your entire business, your entire world can collapse around you. And that is the goal in this sort of thing, because I'll tell you, I mean, what these people can do sometimes is they make these police reports just so they can then turn around and say, he's under investigation.
Yeah.
The point is to build this up in a way that sounds really, really bad. We know that the police investigated and completely exonerated my client. But these people will get on social media and say, oh, there was a police report made. The police were looking into this. And they try and use that to further fan the flames of suspicion, hysteria, and accusation. Okay. And that's what they work on. It's a global whisper campaign, and it happens in school board meetings. It happens on the internet. And it can be without ceasing. And that's why we had to stand up, because like Derrick said, we sent a letter saying, are you aware that you're defaming him, that this is very serious and this has got to stop? And that was publicly thrown in the trash by this lady. And so we had no choice but to go ahead and make this difficult decision to defend Derrick's reputation, to defend his family, his good name, or to let it just happen, to let his character be destroyed, his reputation be savaged forever. That it was never going to stop. It was an endless campaign. And one thing I'd like to add, Richard, is you mentioned that some of Derrick's friends have been trying to help him out in this cause. He's very much the underdog in that situation, because this lady, of course, has been fundraising off of the fact that, she claims that she's under attack. Her free speech rights are under attack. And so there's a huge network that is dedicated to making sure that when a progressive has to defend themselves, there's lots of money to help them do that. And so and she started doing that far before any of Derrick's friends tried to help rebalance the scales a little bit.
Let's show the audience then a little example of their fundraising strategy here. Can we put up on the screen the image of that social media post? All right, so right here, what are we seeing? Derrick, what is this?
This is a screen capture from the GoFundMe page set up by local community activists to help raise money for the defendant, for Bernadette.
Bernadette Guthrie is on the top.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's me. And the picture they used actually included a picture of her daughter. Truth and Liberty has very wisely, and I think very considerately, removed that portion of the image, but actually using my image to fundraise for the person I'm suing.
Okay, so the top says free speech attacked, fight back. So they're actually claiming that what she's doing in defaming you is free speech. Am I understanding that?
Right, and maybe people are not aware of this. That was certainly the point of the demand letter, was to make sure she was aware that throughout the entire history of this country from its founding, defamation has never been protected by the First Amendment. There are other types of speech, violent speech, threats to incite violence or harm someone have never been protected by the First Amendment. And what she has done to Derrick, serially accusing him of serious sexual misconduct and serious crimes, is defamation per se, and that is not protected by the First Amendment. So this is not a free speech issue. This is an issue of whether or not people can be allowed to lie in the most outrageous and disgraceful manner possible to destroy someone simply because the election didn't go the way they wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's put that back up because I want to point out a couple other things about it,
Okay.
if we can. All right, so you also notice that at the bottom there's a name of a guy, Rob Rogers. Who's Rob Rogers, Derrick?
He's the local activist that has organized this fundraising campaign for her. Very active in our school district, very active at our board meetings, and it's interesting, Richard. There seems to be a contingent of people who are, for lack of a better term, obsessed with me. They post about me on social media all day, every day. They criticize everything. And there's nowhere I can go, nothing I can do that's good. They criticize my clothing.
Derrick,
it's actually entertaining.
Isn't Rob Rogers, doesn't he hold an office in the local Democratic Party?
Formally.
Formally, okay.
Formally.
So you have a former officer of the local Democratic Party assisting the defense, raising money for the defense of a lady who has defamed you with these outrageous accusations?
That is correct. And I'll tell you, Dave raised a really interesting point.
Let me just make sure one other thing gets mentioned here. There's a post, a rather lengthy one, but it says that any money over and above what they raise for her lawyers will go to what?
School board candidates.
They're going to use the money they raise to fund leftists to run for school board.
And we wrote them a letter outlining our concerns about that and using Derrick's picture without his consent for purposes of fundraising money. And I had some current concerns about any time you're saying we're going to be raising money for political candidates. There's some serious laws in this state about how you track that and report that. And I'm pleased that they have decided to clarify that. They've now changed their page to say, "Oh, we haven't done that, and we won't be doing that." So
we're good. What were you going to say, Derrick?
So Dave raised two really excellent points. Number one is, what was I supposed to do? Mm-hmm. So she came very early in my term on school board and made it crystal clear I have every intention. I will not be letting this go. I'll be here every meeting, and she fulfilled that promise. Well, I could, and I believe will be, sitting on the school board for 6 more years. Am I supposed to sit there for 6 years and allow myself to be defamed in this manner and force my family can't even watch public comments anymore, watching their dad being called all these outrageous claims. So what was I supposed to do? The cease and desist order was served, and people can see this. The link is on my fundraising page. She comes to the school board meeting, the next school board meeting, and reads the letter out loud, or a portion of it, and then says, "I will now proceed to retract everything I've said about Derrick Wilburn that is not true," and stands there in pin drop silence for 60, 90 seconds, which in a setting like that, that's a long time.
Sure.
So in other words, everything I've said about him is true.
Yeah,
he
so
is
she just
pedophilic.
He doubles down on the false.
Yeah,
the line.
he does enjoy doing these sorts of things for children, and just doubled it down.
You know, I'm really concerned about these tactics of intimidation that we're seeing. It's not just your case, Derrick. It's all over the country. And the effect that it's going to have on not just the policies that get adopted, but people's willingness to even serve in public office if they have to go endure these kinds of situations. I mean, serving on your local school board, it ought to be, I don't know about enjoyable, but it shouldn't be an absolutely horrifying experience, right? You're just serving your local community. Dave, am I right here? Is this something we need to be concerned about?
No, I've seen the same thing in Woodland Park. I had somebody who I think would make an excellent school board candidate, somebody with a fantastic background, a father, somebody who's done teaching, that sort of stuff. And this gentleman said to me, I'd love to do it, but my family has to come first, and I worry, we know the attacks that come after anybody who's a conservative who gets involved in the schools, that it would just be too terrible for my family to endure, and I can't put my family through that. And I think that's not just limited here. I think you're absolutely right, Richard. That's happening all over the country in many different ways.
Okay. Well, we're down to our last 2 minutes for the show today. I got a lot more questions, but I did want to put up the link again for your Give, Go, Send, I think is what it's called, your fundraising page there, Derrick. And if we could display that would be great. Remember, folks, you can find all the evidence you need there of this situation. And let me just ask you for a closing comment, Dave. Can you comment about how To me, the bottom line issue here is the rule of law, and that we can't allow our culture and society to be governed by riots, by violence, by threats, by intimidation tactics. There's going to be times when we agree and we disagree with what the government chooses to do, but it needs to be settled in civil public discourse, and then by our elected representatives, and we have a reasoned response. This what we're doing now is just, if we don't stop it, it could be the death of our country. What do you think?
I think that the rule of law is the greatest gift that the founders bestowed on us. It is the jewel of the American heritage, and it's what separates us from just about every other country in the world, is that it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, how much money you make, that you deserve equal justice in the courts. And so we have always trusted our courts to be able to sort these sorts of things out and to determine who's right and who's wrong. And we need to stick with that. We need to protect and value those sorts of institutions and not devolve into mob rule and high-tech lynchings and things like that. It's destructive to everyone who's involved.
Yeah. Derrick, last words.
Thank you for the time. Hopefully viewers are getting a window into some of the things that do go on. I'm sure my situation is not isolated. I just decided to do something about it and take what some will consider a drastic measure, but I consider it the measure I had to take to protect my name, my family, reputation. And I would advise anyone in my shoes to do the same.
Well, thank you, Derrick. And folks, we can't back down. We can't allow the left to intimidate us and cause us not to do our duty to our country, and to our communities and to our families. We've got to stand up for the truth, and we've got to stand against these tactics of intimidation and fear that the left is throwing at us. And we're out of time on today's show. I want to thank everybody for watching and remind you about our free product giveaway today. It's Andrew Wommack's booklet called What is Truth? And boy, do we need to know that answer to that question today. You can get it by going to truthandlibertygtn.com, and we'll send it to you. So thanks again for watching. God bless you all.